Welcome to NovoEDTalks, where we reveal real-world strategies and expert insights from learning and development professionals. In every episode, we chat with practitioners, course designers, learning strategists, and business leads. We hear about their experiences in the learning industry and predictions for the profession and the trends that they're seeing. But before we get started, a little bit about NovoEd. Founded at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab in 2012, NovoEd is a people-centric, capability-building platform that combines social and collaborative learning to drive performance readiness at scale. Through cohort-based experiences centered around human interaction, NovoEd taps into collective wisdom, placing each learner at the center of perspective, application, and expertise. Large enterprises such as 3M, GE, Marriott International, and Nestle partner with NovoEd to accelerate their critical initiatives, reconnect teams, and achieve rapid alignment through learning that is felt, experienced, and swiftly transformed into impact. Now, let's meet our guest for today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the NovoEDTalks podcast, a podcast for training trailblazers to come and get real. My name is Melissa Fisk. I am the producer of the NovoEDTalks podcast, and today I am joined by Andrea Warfield of Medtronic. Andrea is a lead IT learning coach and global user services representative. She is passionate about learning and mastering new systems, technologies, and software, which has been a cornerstone of her career growth. Her global experience is extensive, having identified training and development needs across continents by collaborating with implementation partners, subject matter experts, and other stakeholders in countries like Australia, Canada, China, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, the UK, and the United States. Andrea, it is such a pleasure to have you here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I've been very flattered to be invited.
Well, why don't you start by, expanding upon that introduction and your role in your company a little bit?
Oh, okay. Basically, training is my passion, and it's something I love to do. And I am so fortunate to have fallen into a role that allows me to do my passion. Not very many people get to do that, especially when I started my career. Now, I work for a company called Medtronic. We're a medical device company, and we've gone through significant changes in how we've managed IT training over the 4 years that I've been there. Partly due to my input, partly due to our old friend COVID, and it's led to some wonderful changes, some interesting challenges, and trying to keep abreast of everything that is changing. For example, if you told me last year that I would be using AI to be helping me build training materials and deal with creating classes and knowing what I should be covering in classes, I would have told you you were on the moon or something. But yeah, Bing Chat or Copilot for the web is now my best friend because part of what's happened in this changing environment is my company ended up downsizing my team, and I am now literally a team of one who does what I do. There are other training resources at the company, but what I do is a little bit different. And that's why we say learning coach instead of trainer, and why I gave you learning coach instead of my technical title. We strongly believe in providing the people we work with, my end users, what they need, when they need it, as they need it, which means I'm more of a coach than I am a trainer. I use more of a social construction approach to my training. And if you're not familiar with that term, basically, I let my learners tell me what they need, and we roll with it from there. It isn't like your old-fashioned, here's the PowerPoint, and click slide 1 and click slide 2. It isn't that. We start the classes off usually. These are live sessions. We usually start them off with, what are your problems? What are you facing right now? What do you need to learn? And we build the class together based on the needs of the people that are in the room, virtual room, with me.
Yeah, I love that. Now, who are some of these learners and what are some of their biggest challenges?
Oh, my learners. My learners range from all the roles across the company. Um, I'm the only IT trainer who does live training or coaching. And so I've worked with everybody from legal professionals to field sales to lab people who are actually developing the products that we build, uh, to executive assistants. And what I need to do for each role is a little bit different because I have to understand the context of their work. So what they need varies depending on their role. Let me give you an example. We made the decision to move recently to Microsoft Teams. We had Microsoft Teams, but in January, we made the decision that we are going to force everybody to use Teams meetings and webinars. Now, for the executive admins, this was a huge change. And, you know, panic, mayhem, the whole craziness that you can expect, because beginning of the years when all the meetings, the recurring meetings for the year get scheduled, all of a sudden they're having to use a new tool. So instead of me waiting around for people to come to me, I instead went to what's we've referred to at the company, a community of practice of the executive admins. And I said, hey, here's this change. Let's set up some training. Tell me what are the things you do so I could get a better idea, because the way they approach scheduling things is very different from how I would schedule things. They're scheduling as a delegate, for example. And we built a training around their needs. It was 3 different sessions focusing on different aspects. And man, did they put my brain to the floor with their questions. They were excellent questions. It was a trial by fire. It was a wonderful experience for everyone because they got a chance to get what they needed right when they needed. And I learned a lot more about Teams meetings and webinars than I ever thought I needed to know. So that's an example of how my end users vary and the kinds of things I have to do to make sure that I meet their needs in a timely fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. So you just kind of spoke anecdotally a little bit to this, but what are some of the biggest L&D challenges that you have to approach and how are you approaching that?
My biggest L&D challenge is getting content ready for my end users. Because I take a socially constructed way of approaching the actual training, I do like to provide my end users a PowerPoint. We call it a PowerPoint because I use the tool PowerPoint. It's actually a handbook, with tips and tricks and things to watch out for. And building that kind of content on the schedule, since I'm only one person on the schedule, none of the heuristics that L&D people are used to apply. I literally had a request come in on a Monday, and Tuesday I'm teaching a class that I might not have even known the topic of until the request came in. And building that has been challenging, and that's why Copilot has become my best friend, because at least it gets me thinking. I draft directly. I'm also very lucky in having access to Copilot. Not all companies allow access to Copilot. The other thing that I have is the other side of my team. Even though I'm the only live trainer who supports globally IT training, the other side of my team is a group of people who build a lot of self-service content. So as I see the need, as I see questions coming up frequently, I'm able to turn to them and say, we need self-service content on XYZ. And I can turn them loose on doing that. All I have to do is review it. Their work is excellent that they do. I'm very fortunate to have them. And we're able to then provide a experience that might not be premier, but at least there's something out there for the end users to grab.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. With the rise of remote work and virtual collaboration, how has your approach to learning and development changed and adapted, if at all? Some organizations have been like global and massive and been kind of doing this all along.
Well, let me roll back a little bit and tell you a little bit about one of the aspects of what I do. I do these dynamic classes. I also do them on a requested basis for teams. So we have a regular schedule, but a group could come to me and say, we have this problem. What of our software that we have access to can help us fix this problem? And then can you teach us how to use it to fix this problem? These sessions came about as a result of having to go hybrid. So the way our company ended up going hybrid, of course, was COVID. And literally, we were emailed on Sunday, do not come into the office. And on Monday, they turned on Microsoft Teams. Nobody knew how to use Microsoft Teams. Nobody knew really how, we still had WebEx in the mix then. Nobody knew how to use WebEx really well, except for the executive admins. And all of a sudden, everybody was having to do that. Up until that point, I had been a live face-to-face trainer. I had done very little virtual training. So we ended up with all of these groups coming at us left and right saying, can you help us? What do we do? This is when the team was bigger, luckily. And we ended up building a program of virtual training that allowed people to either, if once we were back in the office, to attend physically by being in a conference room. If it's local to me, I go in and I'm in the conference room with them, but other people can join hybrid. What this has meant, though, is that it's imperative that I don't have a recipe, I don't want to use the word recipe. I'm trying to find an appropriate word. It's imperative that the trainings that I build are unique for I keep saying this, unique for the circumstances because we're hybrid. So I need to take into consideration things. It also means I've had to expand my comfort zone in using tools like Miro or Whiteboard, or coming up with alternative ways of getting feedback from people. I'm used to being in an IT training classroom, standing behind people. That's 25 years or whatever of my career is that. And then all of a sudden, I'm now 100% virtual. And it was a learning curve. And being willing to continue to try new things and recognize that it was never going to be perfect and it was going to be an iterative process. And like, if that's my one piece of advice on how to manage working hybrid environments and training and building training materials, is remember it's going to be an iterative process, because as the tools become more sophisticated in how we can share our work or encourage people, the more we have to accommodate those tools into our day-to-day work and helping in my case, my end users be successful in their job by virtue of the fact that I have to take advantage of whatever I can to make the experience as dynamic and real as possible for them.
Yeah, absolutely. No easy feat for sure.
I'm so wordy. I apologize. I feel like I'm talking way too much. Thank you, though.
This is great. This is like part of why we love doing this podcast, like getting all these like anecdotal experiences, because there's parts, if not the whole thing, that everyone can relate to. How does your team identify and address skills gaps within the organization?
Oh, good question. We've actually have several venues. Once again, using the technology is available to us. But first and foremost, we actually have, before I go to the tech, we have a once a month meeting that we refer to as the champions meeting. And people who are interested in learning the latest and greatest as to what's happening software wise at the company can join this meeting. We also then have the SMEs and the stakeholders also in this meeting. By virtue of the questions that come out of that meeting, it gives me a good idea on where the pain points are for my end users. That's one way. The other way is by doing the social style class where I start the class off asking for their pain points. I'm able to see trends and patterns. And when I start seeing trends and patterns, I either know it's time to build a class for it or a recording for it or some self-service content for it. Then there's also the tech part of it. So we have a IT service portal. So when tickets get raised, we keep an eye on the tickets to see the kinds of questions that are coming up. That's one way. Another way is we have a very active Viva Engage environment, and I keep an eye on the different communities related to my area of expertise, and I see what questions are coming up. And then the last thing I do is I try and be proactive and keep an eye out on, since we're predominantly a Microsoft shop, I keep an eye out on the Microsoft roadmap. And by having been with my end users for so long, I get a sense for some of the things that are going to impact them in a challenging way or impact them in an exciting way. And I'm able to use those opportunities as a way to do that. And then, of course, our stakeholders that own the actual tech are responsible for letting me know if something's coming down the pike that's going to affect our end users. So that's how I stay abreast. But because I've been at this for quite a while, I have end users that are very comfortable with reaching out to me and asking me questions or making recommendations. And I'm very lucky to have that kind of relationship at a global company.
Yeah, absolutely. But it sounds like you're so on it with like all these different avenues too, that you're like taking intel and info from people, like, and just what they're having issues with, which is brilliant. How do you currently measure the effectiveness of your programs? And do you have any like core KPIs for that? Like, is it, how many people are using the tech stack or whatever?
We used to have this whole survey system and KPIs left and right. And then my team got downsized to one person doing the live side of things. So our KPIs have kind of, at this point in time of the year, have been put to one side. Our new fiscal year is about to start. Come the new fiscal year, my first thing is to rebuild how to track that information. It's difficult for me, I'll be honest, because survey gives you a certain amount of information, but it really doesn't measure the effectiveness of the training. It tells you how the end user felt about the training. It doesn't show you how it's being applied. And one of the things that I'm hoping to do, I don't know if I can do this, what I'm hoping to do is get a better sense of whether or not we're having an impact on the metrics of the support desk. I don't know how to do that. It's on my list for the new fiscal year to investigate that, but that's where I'm headed. Whether, I get there, I don't know. We'll see what happens. And I know a lot of trainers are like, KPIs, oh no. And it's pretty much because how do you tell whether or not your training was effective?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's that question always, opens the door to a lot of other questions and just like, well, what is, what is success and everything like that. So that's always like a very jam-packed question, we feel like.
Yeah.
Do you have an example of a successful case study or an L&D initiative that you think significantly impacted employee performance that you could talk about?
I have to go back to this program that I built, this coaching program that I built. By virtue of people being able to come and put in a request and say, here's my problem. And, the problems could range from An example might be recently, as in a couple of years ago, the European Union changed their documentation requirements. So several teams came to me and were saying, how do we handle these new documentation requirements? This is the old way of doing it. We need to do it this new way. We need to be able to share with the regulators what we do. I took a week. I investigated what some of the possible, I'll get the word out somehow, possible solutions were, and came back and not only made some recommendation, gave them a couple of alternatives, but I then did a custom training just for that group saying, here's what your stuff looks like. So I was using their files, their environment, the kinds of documents that they would be working with, the kinds of questions that they'd have, the use cases. I made sure that their manager who had approached me gave me some use cases so I had examples to work with them. And that is, in this, to my opinion, in this day and age, is imperative to have a successful training program. Isn't to just be pro forma training, but actually be responsive training. And that's what you take nothing else away from what I've been saying today. Training in response of the need is what we need to be looking for. And that need could be an hour training, that need could be 15-minute video, that need could be a one-sheet document that somebody can print out and hold in their hot little hand. It's whatever that particular end user needs in their particular learning style. And that's something I haven't talked about, is you have to remember we're dealing with a diverse set of individuals. So
Yeah.
I can't do one size fits all.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure like some people would rather have a quick little PDF, some people would rather watch a video. And so it's like, how do you make that like bite size and digestible in a bunch of different formats? So no easy job again. What role
But
does
that's what makes it so fun. Don't you see?
Yeah.
By having it be ever changing and all, it's always keeping it fresh. People wonder how I can train the same topics all the time. And it's because it's always changing and it's always fresh, because the people you're working with are different every single hour.
Yeah. No, that I'm someone who
I'm
likes
sorry, I
No, I love
interrupted.
that. I love that. I can totally relate to that. I'm someone who likes to be doing like new things all the time, new challenges, just like staying busy. I can't do the same thing day in, day out. So I completely relate to that. My next question, what role does technology play in your L&D programs? Like you've spoken a little bit to some of the technology you had to bring on like when COVID started. But you know, now that we're kind of like back into our new normal, as we call it, you know, what role is tech continuing to play for you all?
Well, because of the downsizing of the group, right now, my focus has been the last 6 months on enabling end users. And what I mean by enabling end users is encouraging them to use Copilot for the web to ask some of their basic questions. Because my group was not the only group downsized, support desk, et cetera, life in, in the corporate world. So by helping users learn what tech is there that they can enable themselves with, such as AI, such as some of the tools that are hidden in the productivity tools we use. Like, for example, in Teams, a lot of my end users didn't realize they could add applications that, so that they could make Teams be their console. That's part of what I'm doing with that. But for actually developing my content, if it stays still long enough for us to use it, I think somebody is going to figure out how to use it for training. So right now, a lot of Copilot for the web, a lot of using any video tools I can get my hands on to create good video, so that there's some stuff in the self-service area, but also capturing these trainings that I do so that I can share them for other people's reference, because not everybody's go to the class and sit in the class kind of person. making sure that I take advantage of the capabilities of the videos. For dumb stuff that seems really obvious to some people was new to me until recently. I know I'm slow, like chapters in videos so that people could scrub to where, jump to where they wanted to go. That was very, very helpful. I've also started leveraging our SharePoint site and actually publishing little tips and tricks articles on common problems that aren't worthy of a class or a recording, but might be useful for somebody to know, like how to share a screen while they're in a meeting or whatever it is. So that's how I've been leveraging tech. Is I keep looking to see what tools are out there. I keep looking to see what other approaches to training there are and the technology that supports that. So like micro learning and any of the tools we can use for micro learning. Leveraging what we already have to expand the footprint of our training. For example, we've just enabled in our Teams environment, we just enabled Viva Learning so that people can access learning directly from within Teams. Things like that. It isn't ground shaking. It's just using what we have to its fullest and always keeping an eye out for whatever's the next best thing. So if you have anything that's the next best thing, please tell me.
Yes. That's the challenge with technology, right? It just evolves so rapidly, and it's always like, I feel like a balance of like what's going to be really useful for us and like what's like new and exciting, but also what's been a little bit like tested and we know is going to work. That's always like the struggle with that, I feel like.
Exactly. Or like in a corporate environment, there's ideas that I have, like I'd really like to do more with virtual reality, but budget,
Yeah.
tools, except you get the idea. So it's always trying to find the latest and greatest within the confines of working in a corporate environment. And it's a balancing act. And I don't envy anybody having to do it because I find it challenging. I don't know about them.
No, absolutely. Andrea, as a fun little send-off, this is my favorite question to ask, and we save the best for last. What advice would you give to those just stepping into a leadership role?
Oh, man. I think I already gave the biggest piece earlier in the talk. Remember, it's iterative.
Yeah.
It's going to be iteration after iteration after iteration. And then I'm going to share another piece of advice that a manager gave to me, and that is the first time you do anything, it's going to suck. Just accept that, realize that that's going to be the case, and do that. Now, the other thing I want to emphasize, because it's so easy, especially like in the environment I've been in over the past 6 months with the downsizing and all, I want to make sure if you're stepping into a leadership role, yes, I know your career is serious, but please, please take time for yourself. Because if you don't rejuvenate yourself, you're not going to have the passion you need for your end users or your students or your learners.
That's such beautiful advice, Andrea. Thank you so much. What an amazing way to end this episode. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us on the NovoEDTalks podcast. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in to another episode.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye.